Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Save Childhood podcast.
I'm Jennifer McCarville.
And I'm Nicole Dugan. And today we are talking about one of the 14 tenets,
of course,
that you can find on savechildhood.org, which is go outside. Now that sounds like such a simple thing, but it is so important, and so many studies have shown that every generation is spending less and less and less time outside.
Isn't that just incredible? I mean, it's obviously concerning, but the question is why, why is it concerning? And what's the value of being outside? And also, why is it happening?
Right.
We're not going to go a lot in this episode about why it's happening, but, studies have shown that there are very specific reasons it's happening. Less time, parental concern about safety. There are several things, but we'll talk about that in another episode. Today, we're going to talk about why it's important and what are the benefits of making sure children are spending time outside as an encouragement for, this is the right way to spend our day and the right thing to do for our children.
And not just going outside, but spending time in free play outside.
Free play.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the big things about free play is that children have to have space to move freely in order to play freely. Mm-hmm. So when children do go outside, a lot of times that looks like we're going to a park with a lot of structures. A nature park gives free space, right? But so many places for children to play already limit their free play because they are full of structures that don't have a lot of ability for children to be flexible with that.
Right. So, and having soccer practice outside isn't the kind of outside play that we're talking about.
Absolutely not.
Right.
No. And that's a really structured activity as well.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about that. We're talking about children go outside and play. When I was a kid, it was, go outside, I'll see you at dinner, and the hose is there if you're thirsty. So, and that was, in the 70s. But even we were just looking at a study recently that just said in 2018, 35% less time was spent by children outside than in the previous generation. So, I mean, and it just goes on, like you said. Yeah. That's just one snippet. There's lots of research that tells you that children need to be outside playing.
So let's talk about why.
So, big reasons are sensory integration. Children's sensory systems are learning how to work and integrate, and they're coming together in order to best serve the child. So more and more children are in types of occupational therapy, which helps with all kinds of sensory challenges and motor challenges. Children need to move. They need to have those sensory experiences of different textures and temperatures and those things. And children have to move, and they have to move big. They need lots of space to move, and they need to figure out how to interact with one another. And there's lots of space to do that outside. Also, there's such a benefit emotionally to children, to adults, to everyone for being outside in nature, free time. So you're able to reset emotionally, you're able to calm, it's a very calming effect for being outside. Even studies have shown looking out a window to the outside, a green area outside, that they've done studies that register heart rates calm down, breathing calms down, just seeing nature through a window.
Wow.
So the benefit of being in nature and the impact that has on our breathing and on our brains and on our emotions, all positive things over and over. So those are some of the benefits of being outside. But growing their bodies, children, like I was mentioning, a lot of children are needing occupational therapy for physical reasons, they, and some children really need that, but also we have found that children who are able to use their bodies learn the ability to develop those motor skills a lot more easily. So it's very, very valuable for their motor systems, their sensory systems, their emotional intelligence and well-being.
And what about risk taking?
And
taking risks.
Oh, so important. They have to be able to interact with things and try them out again and again and again to develop the confidence to try hard things and take a risk. And risk taking, I always talk about how learning is all about taking a risk and having the confidence to know you can. And you can keep trying that. You develop grit as you're trying to accomplish things by climbing and, other active experiences outside. So developing grit is a very vitally important skill for success in life. And then also being able to assess risk. So children need to play freely so they can learn to assess risk. What happens so often is we are hovering over the children, telling them how to use things, telling them what to do, helping them move their bodies, which is a big no-no. We do not put a child in a place that they can't get to on their own. And if they're trying to get to, taking a risk that they're going somewhere really high, or they're, we'll step closer and just be there and maybe talk to them about it. But when children learn to listen to their bodies, they're less likely to become injured. When children have experiences of their own, trying things out again and again, taking a risk, trying something that's a little bit hard, they learn to stop and not hurt themselves a lot better than the children who always have adults there telling them what to do. Because when you always have an adult saying, put your foot here, do this, do that, go here, do that, here, I'm going to put you up high, I'm going to take you down, I'm going to push you on the swing. There's so much lost for children in how to assess different risks on their own. Because then when you don't have a person there telling you exactly what to do and how to do it, you don't know how to navigate those things.
And one thing that I've learned from you, and it's so cool to see it in action, is that children do naturally listen to their bodies. They know what risks they are ready for, and they will respond accordingly if you are just there observing and watching. And I've seen it in action, and it is so true. They know their bodies, but they need the time to listen.
That ties into our trust the process tenet. Trust that process that's ingrained in them to navigate these situations and scenarios. And give them, that's one of the other things about these climbing structures that are very closed in their options of use. You go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. And not many children can fit on them at the same time. So there's a lot of waiting, and children aren't made for that. So that those actually increase risks as well, because children want to be in spaces they can't fit, right? And it's hard to navigate that. But you want to have these open spaces where there's a real, genuine risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And watching them climb higher and do things and listening to their bodies. Another argument is, well, if they climb up that structure, then all the other children are going to want to do it too, and someone's going to get hurt. Well, that is actually a pretty ludicrous argument, bottom line, because when you are raising children to assess risk, they will listen to their bodies. They won't do it. And we see that happen again and again and again in our classrooms. And other children will observe and kind of take note until they're comfortable. And since we're not there helping make it okay, they have to learn to read their bodies. And it is a beautiful thing.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So we know how important it is for free play outside. Mm-hmm. What kind of things do our environments need, whether it's in the classroom, an outdoor classroom, which we have many of on campus, or in the yard at home?
So really, we think they need a lot, and they really don't. They need a swing. Children need swings. There's so much regulation that happens when swinging and development of their proprioceptive systems, in which that's just cannot be overrated, underrated. So anyway, a swing is really important, which means you do need to make sure they have enough space to move back and forth, and that they have something soft if possible to fall on. Of course, in the schools, that's not an option. We make sure that they have something under the swings that's an adequate fall zone. But you can do something like a an area of pebbles or sand, something soft. But swings are really, really important. But really what they need is a space of ground, of grass. Doesn't have to be grass. It can be mud. It can be whatever. Dressed for the weather, dressed for the conditions. And they need water, sand, containers to put water and sand in and schlep it around. They need, of course, balls. They'll find sticks, some of those, the top toys of childhood, right? Sticks and balls. And so they need those kinds of things available, containers of some kind. Also, what, referred to as loose parts, things like, some old tires that you've checked to make sure there are no wires sticking out of, and that they can build with, and pieces of lumber that they can move around, things they can interact with that don't have a designated outcome. So just, things of those nature outside in an area where the children can move around and do things with them.
And it's also okay for them to be too heavy.
It's
that's
important.
Building their core strength and coordination to move around.
Yeah, and also their proprioceptive system, they need that heavy work. So it's important to do that. And then when you put those containers and they're moving them around, then they're doing that as well. But it doesn't take a lot, and you don't have to have a huge climber. Climbing is really important and it's valuable. So trees, if they have trees to climb, if they have, but even when the time comes and you're able to put a climbing structure in, we're always really cautious about doing so, because children need wide open spaces to build obstacle courses and to set up games and to create a pickup game of baseball or volleyball or whatever the sports are that they're experiencing in their lives. So we don't want to fill the space with too many structures. That's a really important tidbit, whether you're at home or in a classroom in a school somewhere.
So less is more.
Less is more.
Loose parts are a plus.
Loose parts for the win, yep. And then different elements, water, sand, dirt. Of course, grass is wonderful. You definitely having grassy areas where they can lay on the grass, feel the grass. There's so much research about grounding to the earth and having your bare feet on the grass. And kids, when I was growing up, I never wore my shoes. I think children now, they have to have their shoes on all the time for really ridiculous reasons. And I think if you can reconsider that in an environment that's risky but not dangerous, I think you have to really be able to discern between those two things. The adults need to make sure that it's not a dangerous environment. There are no nails in the boards. There's nothing that if they step on, that's going to injure them, those types of things. And you've done that piece before, the children are using the space, then they should be able to go barefoot. And our children go barefoot every day at school. And it's important, when you think about all of the sensory input, the tactile learning that comes through your hands, and even just touching your hands and, noticing that, the feelings and the input that you're getting. Imagine if they got that from their feet also. It's so incredibly valuable. Plus, they can really use their feet to help them grip things as they climb, etc. So when possible, no shoes is a gift to children and their development.
For sure. Some even just wear socks out there for the same reasons. They might not be ready to go barefoot, but it helps them grip with their toes and move.
Yeah, and some children have an aversion to that sensory input, and giving them the opportunities for those different textures and those experiences without pushing. Over time, what we see is that a lot of them become comfortable with that at their own rate in their own process, and then they start developing ways to cope with that, work through that, and resolve some of those things. I mean, we've had children literally who've joined the school and had a sensory processing diagnosis, and after being here for 6 months, they went back to the specialist that was supposed to start their therapies with them, and those things had resolved because they had been in a sensory rich environment where they'd had the freedom to explore. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case with every child. That just was a specific case that was shared with us after the fact. We didn't even know this until well after the fact when the mama shared it with us. And we were just, so amazed again, the affirmation that when you honor the process of learning and growing, and you give the children the things that we know they need to thrive, it works. And so that's not to say that there aren't going to be times that children need special supports and interventions, because there certainly are.
Right.
But that was really, I think, important for us to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think you're right. So what advice do you have for parents who want to get their children outside more, but maybe need to break the habit of what they're doing? I mean, what encouragement do you have for parents who know their kids need to be outside more in free play?
I think not so much an encouragement, but I think something to do is a lot of reflection on why you don't make time for that, why it's hard, and then adjusting the things that are hard for you and your family and your situation. For example, if it's you don't like critters and you don't want to be outside with them, it's talking about that and being honest with yourself about what that means, and finding ways that you can address that concern and still make this available to your children, because it's vitally important to them and their growth and their healthy development. So, and also I think another big obstacle is schedules. Our schedules tend to be so full, and that is something that's much more important, that younger children are able to play freely outside than they are to be enrolled in a sport. It's not the same thing, realizing that. So whether they're involved in a sport, etc., and that means, they're outside, well, they're not getting the kind of outside time that is so valuable, and we know that has great benefits. So if you have to choose, what are you going to give up? I think that those are really important things. Also, if your fear is that something will happen to them, etc., really reflecting on that and trying to navigate the reality of that fear. What's it really based in? How real is the concern or the risk maybe that you're worried about? Because we know those are reasons. But just really thinking about, okay, this is really important. Why are the reasons we're not doing it? Because they vary. They vary greatly, and they vary in different seasons, right? Another thing is when you think about the things we've talked about today and realize they don't need you right on top of them once they're past the toddler stage. Then they need you right, really close by. But once they are 3-4 years old, knowing that you can have them in a safe place to play and they don't need you right on top of them. Now, out in public, that's a little bit different. So if you can create situations where they can play in a yard, a fenced area, then you can relax and know you can go outside and you can be near them, but not in the middle of it. So maybe you can take a project you're working on outside and you can keep checking on the children and, having your eyes available to them. But knowing that you're giving them a gift that's really important for their whole development and really important for their lifelong belief in who they are as capable human beings.
Wow. Yeah.
It's big.
That's powerful. It's important for their brain. It's important for their body. It's important for their emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. It really, and once I think we realize that, everybody wants good things for children, right? We want good things for kids. And once we really think about it, we go, oh, you know what? We need to make time in our lives for that. Choose schools that have a deep-seated value, understanding and commitment to having children play outside. And I don't mean, structured recess or structured, but that they know that one of the most important things children can do is spend lots of time outside, and make sure you're bringing nature into their worlds in the classrooms as teachers and also as parents, that, there are plants and there's time to stop and watch what the ants are doing and respect them. And, but really you just want to move. Lots of benefits.
So that wraps up today's episode about going outside and the importance of that. If this resonated with you today, like, subscribe, comment, keep the conversation going, and share this with others who are also excited about saving childhood and the importance of that.
Yeah, fighting the good fight and changing the conversations to really be what children need, right? And be sure to visit savechildhood.org. You'll see the 14 tenets there that we're always talking about one or two or many of them on the podcast, etc. And also, if you are an educator interested in visiting the school and seeing how these practices can look in real life, we're having a conference in November, and we would love for you to sign up for the Safe Childhood Conference.
It's pretty amazing, for sure. So you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. And our new episodes release every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. Central Time, and they are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks
Awesome.
for joining us.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.